Okay, welcome everyone. This is my second episode of Scoring with Sora. The idea is that I generate clips from Sora AI and then I write musical scores to them. So here are the clips here. Okay, and like always, if you have any prompts that you'd like me to use for the next episode, just go ahead and leave it in the comments. I will try to use them. Okay, so we got this detective here. Basically, he walks into a shop, finds some sort of music box, and it's a close-up. So just a quick little scene. So I think because last time what I did is I did a piano sketch, but today I'm going to try basically playing with different instruments first and trying to get like the sound or the atmosphere that I want first, and then building the melody from that. So kind of an opposite approach. We'll see if it works better here. Okay, so I was looking at this pack from East West called Ghost Rider. Like I could go for like a music box, but I think that might be a little boring. So I'm gonna try to play with some of my other options here. Let's see, we can try. That could be interesting, like a sort of hyper synthesized. Okay, so the way that this works, when we use this method, the idea is that we first develop an idea, whether it's with one instrument, with multiple instruments, whatever, as long as it's one clear, easy to understand idea, and then we can kind of develop that. So I do kind of like the sound of that, but I don't know if it's like, a memorable core idea. Okay, we'll go ahead and leave this in. Let's see. Vocal pad. But our idea needs to be a little different. So let's see. We can do a little brainstorming exercise, and this I highly recommend. Basically, just grab a notepad or whatever, and the idea is that we're doing what's it called? Flow of thought, basically unfiltered thinking of what ideas we could have for this clip. Right. So we don't filter. We just rain, detective, dark, mystical. What else? Shop. Harpsichord, harp, guitar, electric. What else? What other ideas? Okay, dim lights. letter. And we're just throwing everything that comes to mind, no filter. Blue, orange, music, clocks, bells. Okay. We'll throw out two more just random ideas. Angry, synth, semi-modern, hybrid. Okay. So I do like this sort of semi-modern hybrid idea, so we can kind of build off of that. So if we can kind of combine semi-modern hybrid, so we're going to use synths, but like synths that utilize stylistic or I guess traditional instruments that you'd expect to hear with this scene. So synths that are mixed with like flex strings and mallet instruments. Right, okay, so now we've got some ideas here. Okay, so then how can we better justify this? Let's start thinking about in terms of the actual sound or character of the music. So I think it'll be minor, but in a way that's not just dark, but like weird. Unexpected chord progressions. That's kind of what we're looking for. So mysterious, unexpected. Mysterious, unexpected chords. Slower tempo. Right. Now we have a brainstorm here. So let's see if you can find a synth that utilizes some of those older, like more classical instruments in a modern way. Brainstorm. Okay. Browser. So we want. Let's first start with the mood. Mood. Mood here. Yeah. Okay. Tense, suspenseful, multiple, strange. Okay. Kind of. That's a good sound. Not something for the melody, but we'll put that in our notepad here, just so we remember that. Let's see, what was it called? Apparitions and piano. Piano. Right, that's kind of what I was talking about though, like a synth with like real elements, right? So this one's like a pad, but it's built off of a piano sound. Oh. Ooh, I like that one. Okay, that's interesting. So we're actually in, let's see. Forget what type of scale that is, but okay. So I think we got our main idea. It's just these chords, so it's D and A together, and it goes D to F sharp together, which is X string major, and then D to B flat. Right, and then like there's lots of room to develop that because the D and G sounds good together. Yeah, like there's lots of directions that we could take this. Very unexpected. Well, yeah, that C sharp next to the D on the bottom. We can go that way for unexpected, so we can do basically two parts. So this first part, that's what we were doing before. And that's the second part. It goes up to the C sharp. Okay. Oh, and make sure you put in our click before. Click during counting. Okay. Yeah, that with just a little bit of pitch bend. The idea is that we don't want the harmony to be quite stable. We can drop some reverb on here. Yeah, we're going to to keep it slightly detuned, slightly raised, but we can kind of change it over time. Okay, and this is coming in a little loud. Okay, so we got our idea. And luckily, the idea is already half of what we need, like, in terms of lengthwise. Okay. And then we had that one pad that I liked. That was basically a piano synth. Let's see. Apparitions in the piano. Alright, so pull up Omnisphere here. Apparitions. Probably help if I spelled it right. Let's type in piano then. Then maybe we can try to find it through sorting. Let's see, before we had mood here. And then we said tense, suspenseful. Yeah, one of these. This one. I do like starting it like. Okay, now we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to increase or to enhance what it already is? What I'm thinking is tremolo in the cello. Since we don't really have anything in the lower end yet, we can add some tremolo cellos that'll kind of like fade in and out. So let's try doing that. I could try to basically replicate the melody in the cellos. That might help strengthen it, but we'll have to see how it sounds. Because sometimes if you move, because it's slower moving, it should be fine. Sometimes if you move the bass parts too fast, it sounds weird. I was trying to use Omnisphere again. Gotta go here. Go to contacts. Okay. I'm kind of wondering, do you want a solo cello or do you want a studio? probably just a solo, because I was trying to imagine, like, if I were to hire a real orchestra to do this, it would be, it would make more sense just to have the one cello. So I think that will sound more believable, but we can try both ways and just see how it sounds. Okay, we don't want the classical legato. Okay, that's going to take a second to load. Sorry, I can minimize this. Oh, but at least I can play with some of the other instruments. I'm just trying to figure out a part for the cello while it's loading here. Right, because if I play this, okay. Our cello's up and ready now. Done. No. Let's see. I'm going to try just playing this harmony part. We'll see if we can make it sound good. Okay, we got something here. One thing I definitely have to do though is modulate it. So let me write in the modulation. Okay, and I think string instruments can actually fairly easily bend their pitch, right? They just move their fingers. So pitch bend is not working, so it doesn't matter. I think it should sound okay. I'm going to give this a little more pre-game just because we use such a low modulation. Get like 8. No, she. we can actually leave this, let this linger on just a little bit. Okay, so we got an idea here. I think that cello is sounding pretty good. What I might try to do is a similar thing here in the bass. Make sure I pull up the contact here. Okay, library. We don't have, okay, we'll have to do a bass section. We'll just make sure to use some close mics so it doesn't sound too weird. Make sure I actually name this. Oh, it's gonna take a second here. Here we go. Yes. Oh, I think it's because my modulation is all the way down. No, it's not registering. I wonder if the basses don't have tremolos. Maybe I just have to let it load in. And if not, I'm not entirely opposed to using sustains, just because the cellos are already tremoloing. Yeah, I think the it would have faded out if you didn't have any tremolos. Weird. Okay, I'll look into that. Oh, it's because it's already apart. Okay, let's try that. Okay. So wait on that one. Okay, and this is where we can bring in the music box sound here. One thing we can do to keep it interesting is to start the music box melody not exactly on the bar like here. So if you start it like halfway through the bar or even less, it can kind of trip up the audience, but we could use the same melody, so we do still have that consistency here. I don't know if I want to do glockenspiel or the traditional music box. Maybe a little bit of both. That works actually. See, the original melody was just F sharp, D, A, or let's see, it was this. Okay, so it's from A to F sharp to B flat. I should probably name this here. It's going to be kind of weird though because it's playing over that C sharp that we ended up with. Okay. I think we're gonna cut it back up to D. Let's see if that works. And we can kind of fade these out. Because pulling it over that C sharp, it works for like a second because it's weird and confusing, but then it becomes a little too disjointed. So you just cut this one over here. back off. Okay, kind of liking this. Like it jumps at kind of a weird, unexpected part. One thing I think I can do is add something that basically covers these 4 bars, because the transition is right here. And right now it's a little jarring, which is good. But if we have some sort of thing here, we could potentially smooth out that transition a little bit. I'm thinking tremolo violas or violins. I think let's go with violas because the high register is already being filled. I'll just come up. Here it is. Okay. The high register is already being filled with the music box. So if we have high violins come in, they might conflict a little bit. So if you leave it as violas, it should give our music box plenty of space. Let's see. Solo strings, violas. Okay, that's going to take a second to load. So it's going to be kind of strange because the violas are going to come in playing. I'll put on the cellos just motivate. Basically D over C sharp, because the cellos and the synth are playing that C sharp. And these makeshift violas for right now are playing. But it didn't sound as bad as I thought it would. Here we can remove that volume automation just for now. Okay, I'm trying to think of something we could do that's a little bit more interesting than sustains. What if we just did this? If we just do the A and not the D here, and we can make it legato, instead of doing tremolo, we could actually have a more legato line. And then what we could do is kind of a call and response. Let's see. So here we go. Oh, no longer in the cellos, now that our violas are finally ready. So this will go da, da, and then the music box will start. Let's try it. I think that kind of worked. let it be a little louder here. Okay, we'll mod it in. These synths are a little too much. Okay, that works. This needs some sort of reverb though. Let's see. There we go. It really sounds like it wants to resolve back to that D, which I don't want to do. We can do kind of a false resolution. C sharp is the fifth of what? Oh, hopefully it doesn't crash on me. Let's see. It's got to connect to iLock so it could use that reverb here. Here we go. Okay, so I just grab okay, so if C sharp is the fifth of F sharp, in theory we can jump from here to F sharp. Play here in the bass. Why isn't the bass registering? Do we bring the modulation all the way down? Oh, I wonder if we bent so low that we accidentally hit the key switch. We could play the F sharp here, slightly before the other chords end. No, we didn't speed up. we need right here to signal that transition is some sort of low boom, I think. Because like suddenly we're in a different key. I think I have the Easter Island hits from Spitfire. That should work pretty well. Where's my Spitfire? Oh, it's Alvin Selects. Oh, I think I have an Albion one here. That should work. And then Darwin percussion. Also Banks. Easter Island. You know what? Hans Zimmer hit might actually work better, especially if we see a low pass it. Hans Zimmer. Yeah, drop some reverb on that. Maybe not that much. I could even build up to it a little bit. That is something I do recommend when you're writing music is anytime you have a transition, try to find ways to lead up into that, into the new section rather than just hitting them with something new. And it makes your music feel a lot more coherent, right? So rather than just having this boom here right at the end or right at the new section, which works, you build this transition into that boom. So we have a few softer booms that slowly build up volume. Right, just a little bit more natural sounding, and it kind of links one section of the song back to the other one. And by the way, that is kind of good advice. Like if you're having a hard time making a song long enough, I used to struggle with that a lot when I was newer, where basically like I'd write something and then I'd feel done and it'd be like 15 seconds of music, and it's like, okay, how do I expand this? Sometimes what you can do is you can take a break and write like a completely new section that sounds nothing like the old section, just a completely new idea here, and then you write the transition later, right? So sometimes that can help you when you get stuck, is you just basically ignore the first part, write a whole new idea, and then find a way to write a transition that merges both ideas together. That's a good way to help you to develop your songs into longer arrangements. Okay, now what we got to do. Okay, we got to justify musically with the picture too. So because we have the scene change here, which is after our transition, basically we want to fill up this space here with something Just trying to think of what. Something that would indicate leading up to this new scene transition. We might even do what we suggested, where we just start writing over here, kind of our newer section, and then building the transition in a second. Okay, so what do we want to do in this clip that's new then? We can kind of utilize some of the older ideas, or at least some of the older instruments that we had before. We could, well, let's jump into our brainstorming phase again. That seemed to work pretty well, so. Okay, for our new section. This is warmer, closer, more intimate, memory, perhaps. That's kind of the vibe that this gave me, is like he's getting closer because he remembers something. So discovery, intrigue, a little less dark and gritty. More and like. Okay, in terms of musicality, we could use like a deeper vibraphone, warm pad, a more realistic choir, perhaps, wooden xylophone, maybe. Full strings. Full sound. Right. That's kind of a contrast between this old section. Actually, yeah. Look at this. Okay. Now we get to ask ourselves, how can we incorporate the old melody or the old idea that we had and make it fit all these new ideas? We already kind of went through some of the instruments changes that we could do. We could try to change it into more of a major sort of sound too. We did jump into that key of F sharp, and I'm not sure if we established it as a major or a minor yet. We might have played just the first and the fifth of the chord. Let's see. Right, because we come to F. C. Yeah, so that's just the first, the fourth, and the fifth. So we could go either way, major or minor with it, and it would sound perfectly fine. But first things first, let's pull up the instrument that we need. Just gonna grab something wooden, like a wooden mallet, because it suddenly goes from like harsh, cold, to dark and gritty, narrow, to like warm and full. So something kind of wooden would sound better, I think. Let's see, category. In terms of percussion, woods. That's interesting. It is kind of low. This isn't going to take the melody, but sometimes when you have an idea, it's good to just kind of go with it, let it play out. Try it again. Let's see. This is playing F sharp, C sharp. Okay, so it's over here. Okay, we still need to get that new instrument. I can play that. I don't know if I want it to be major, but at least a little warmer. Vibraphone. Oh, marimba, that's what I'm looking for. That sounds pretty good. Because it's in four. Oh, I did not hit record. But like, you see how this here is a development of this. Like, it's the same idea, but just two different interpretations of the same idea, right? Because it's just like the three things, but this one kind of plays around with it more rhythmically. Right. So it doesn't feel like a whole new idea. It feels like the original idea was developed. And I mean, that's something I struggled with a lot when I was a beginner, is being able to take an idea and just explore it out in 1,000 different ways, but it's still being the same idea. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can be pretty creative with it. Like that's kind of the beauty of music. Okay, so what we're gonna have to do now, somehow transition from this because we only have 3 bars here. So transition from that into this. Well, one thing to make this a little easier is add a little reverb to our marimba here, just so it sounds a little more consistent with what was there before. Okay, so one thing we might want to start doing is introducing this slowly. So we want to take this and blend it with this. Okay, so the biggest difference I notice is like the rhythm. It's like half the speed. Okay. Then we can take this one instrument at a time. So Omnisphere, I mean, it kind of faded off already, so we don't have to worry about that. The cello does cut off kind of suddenly, so. Let's let the cello play off here for a second. Okay, bass. Let this one kind of fade out slowly. Allows for a smoother transition here. Music box is next, so we can take this, but we want to start fading it out. So basically, at the end, we have very few notes. At the beginning, we have the same number of notes. And kind of fade it out. I think it would sound a little more natural if it faded out via velocity. And we could even start a little quieter here. All right, so you see how we did that? We built a whole new idea, a whole new section here, and then we built the transition later. And sometimes that just makes music writing a little easier than try to like write from start to finish and keep it smooth and consistent. Sometimes it's easier just to write a whole new idea and then write the transition. Okay, so let's give it a listen. We threw together a rough cut. This is what I call rough cut in my mind. Sorry, I'm a video editor, so that's kind of the terminology I use. But the idea is that we want to throw together something that works, right? And then basically later we kind of go in and detail it, figure out what the song needs, what it wants, etc. But right now we have something functional. Turn off the machine. Right, I think that works. We go from this very dark, mysterious to a little warm and more discovery, but I think the transition is pretty smooth. Listen to it once more, just to hear the transition. There you go. 45 seconds. Different. Okay, so now we go section by section and figure out what it needs. Okay, one thing I feel this is missing is like some air. Because, we see that it's dark out. And I think that would be, if this is a real film, the sound editor would have some wind sound effects. That wouldn't be the job of the composer, but sometimes you can incorporate some windy elements into it. So let's see. Potentially a flute doubling this melody here could add that little breath of life that we need here. But we want kind of a weird flute. Let's see. Category, woodwinds. Well, not something that high, like an alto flute maybe. I'm looking for something that's airy though. Like a pan flute. Yeah, and this isn't going to take front and center. It's just going to basically be in the background and just be a little extra wind, a little extra air. Let's see. Okay, let's look now at the top part here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put this over here so you can see it. Right in the modulation here, and then we might change it up a little bit so it's not exactly the same as what's already there. Okay, I think this one doesn't have modulation, but we can use expression here. Crescendo here. I think it naturally breaks here, but that's okay. Be a little more dramatic with that crescendo. Go way down here. Okay. This music box, when it comes in, is a little harsh, so I'm going to go ahead and make the volume up a little bit. Okay, the next thing that I hear that it wants, and by the way, I think I mentioned this in the last episode. The way I do this is I build a rough cut, and then usually I shoot for about 30 instruments. Because and obviously every time I've tried this, I find that it's about 30 when the song feels full and correct. Um, so, and it kind of gives me the excuse to keep on thinking of things to add, because sometimes you just get lazy and like, oh, that sounds fine how it is, and then just export it, and it's not your best work. So you just try to find layers and add and add and add until it gets cleaned up. And I think if I was writing for a real orchestra, I would take a similar approach, right? Where you get the bare bones, and then basically you fill out all the instruments that would be in the orchestra. You give them parts. It's kind of the same idea here. So we're shooting for about 30 instruments. Unless, for whatever reason, the project you wanted a specifically kind of empty feeling. But here we don't necessarily want that. So we'll go ahead and add one instrument at a time. This one needs a rolling cymbal here. Just like, I like to think of it as like, if you were a painter, right? First, I've seen lots of different methods of painting, but one of the better ones that I've seen, like, Bob Ross or whatever, they build out the canvas and they just very kind of loosely spot the idea of the image, right? He puts like a mountain range and then, the blue for the water, and it really looks like nothing when he first throws it together, and then slowly he adds little details and details and details, and finally it starts looking like something good, right? I think it's kind of the same principle with music, right? So first you throw something together that works, and then you kind of go into this detailing phase. And honestly, I think there's never a point where it's like, I've added enough detail or this sounds perfect. You'll never get to that point, which is kind of sad, but that's how it is with art. So you kind of, what I do is I set a goal for myself where you figure out, at what point it's good enough to be exported or to do, what you want to do with it. And since this is kind of a scoring with Sora rather than something going in like a Hollywood film, we're shooting for about 30 instruments. Okay, so cymbal, we'll add a little reverb to it. That's fine. And then we might add like a timpani roll. Actually, we can just add a whole timpani. Things like this, like rolls and cymbals, are kind of a life hack for transitions. There's like no way to make something feel like continuous and smooth as throwing a cymbal on there. Not just willy-nilly, but like it does help with transitions. Let's see, temp rolls. That's 10. Yeah, go. Okay, can add a little reverb on here. Is there a lower one? We can EQ it a little bit too. There we go. And yeah, like I said, don't leave all your mixing till the end, because the effects, the EQ, and things like that, do affect the way that it sounds, and that will influence your decisions. Because if you wait till the end, then you'll end up either muddying your mix or something. So it's usually a good idea to kind of mix as you go, so you have a good idea of what the song needs and where the song currently sits. And then we can have a higher symbol here, or a higher temporal that goes up with the symbol. And just a tip, if you're going for realism, timpani players normally have 4 drums. So, like if you want it to sound like a real orchestra, pick 4 notes for the timp and stick to those. Because basically timpani players will go through and tune each note to what the song needs. So just a quick tip. And also one thing that I've heard, and this doesn't really relate to my song currently, but lots of times people will be like, okay, you need to make sure that you give woodwinds lots of time to breathe. And that's true if it's a small section or if it's a solo woodwind, but not necessarily true if you have a big section of woodwinds, like if you have 11 or 12 woodwind players, because what you can do, this comes from my experience in bands, is you just stagger breathe, you take turns breathing. So you can essentially hold a note infinitely long, you just take turns breathing. Because that is the one, I think, fallacy that I've heard from composers, as they say, don't let the woodwinds play too long because it's not realistic because they need to breathe. But in reality, they take turns breathing. So, I mean, it could still sound realistic if you have very long sections of woodwinds. I think that's fine. But if it's a solo woodwind, like we have here, then you do need to give it space for breath. Or if it's a small section, you do. The same is not true of strings, because obviously if you're a string player, you can keep moving the bow. There's no limit to how long you can do that. Okay, next, bass drum. I want like a standard kind of orchestral bass drum here. Oh wait, we already had one, didn't we? We only used it once. Is this Hans Zimmer one? Oh, speaking of which, I should probably name my tracks. This is like a stomp. Wood. Okay, this is actually my Hans Zimmer bass drum. I mean, it works right there, but I wanted a different bass drum that kind of fills out some of these other spots here. We'll use the Opus orchestral bass drum. Category: drums and percussion. Bass drum. So usually when I do bass drums, I kind of throw it wherever I think could use emphasis, because I figure you can always remove some of them later or de-emphasize, like hit it softer. Okay. One thing I think it is missing is some sort of rhythmic driving force here at the beginning. Trying to figure out what I want. I don't think I want shakers. I think I'm looking for more like a synth. Let's see. Okay. That actually might work. Okay, I think it's okay in there. I would definitely put another driving force in there. And what we could do, lots of times with like these non-essential things, sometimes I don't put them in right at the beginning. I put them in like, a few bars in. That way it just kind of gives the music a little more variation, a little more movement. And have it creep in slowly too. Okay, we try another. I know Opus does have that Forbidden Planet thing. I know we're not going for a sci-fi vibe, but it might have something. Yeah, because this kind of has that sort of dark feeling to it. If you add that. down to like half smooth. Set to 1/8. That's another tip that I'd give when you're going into this, I guess, detailing phase or whatever you want to call it, is focus your time and effort on enhancing what's already there rather than writing new parts. Because if you keep on writing new parts, it's going to get real muddy real fast. That's definitely something that I made a mistake as a beginner, is I'd always try to write all these new parts, and then eventually it was just too much going on. And it's tempting when you're writing for like 30 different instruments, but try, when you write for an instrument, try to keep what's already there. I think, for the first, 10 instruments or whatever, the brainstorming, that's when you go crazy with all the different parts. But like after you get to the 10th instrument, then everything else is basically enhancing what you already have, not adding new stuff. The pitch bend, I think, is still here. That's why I got all weird. Okay. Let this one linger out a little longer here. Yeah, I think that actually enhances it a lot. It fills out the sound quite a bit, which makes it sound a lot better. Next, what is learning? I was thinking this part does need a little bit of a glockenspiel, especially since it's a close-up of the music box. It feels kind of weird not having one. So I was going to try to add that. Okay, the second half, I think we can use a shaker. I'm a little hesitant though, so we'll see how it sounds. If we have it really quiet, just kind of sitting there in the background, just to kind of give it some life. Let's see. And the cool thing about this library, Shimmer Shake Strike, is you can set it so it plays basically whenever the host plays, so whenever Cubase plays. So you can easily preview all the different presets they have, and you can quickly make your own. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. We'll loop a part here. And then trigger goes to host. Then what we can do is basically, the first thing we'll do is we'll find the parts that we want to emphasize. And this is true of percussion in general, not just when you're using this. I usually find the notes or whatever you want to emphasize first and then build a beat around that. Right? Because the role of percussion, I mean, sometimes it's to create its own groove, but usually what you want to do is enhance, like I said, enhance what we already have. So, done. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we should do it because basically the main rhythm starts a little later, so we're going to be a little offset if we do like that. Right here. So. Oh, interesting. Okay. Now I add the same with the keys. I think the pattern we did was pattern 1, which is on the F. It's like the key switches on this one are a little weird, so sometimes I hit the ones that don't need to hit. So pattern that one. Okay. That is B flat 1 or 2. I think it's 2. We'll bring it in even before the second part so we can kind of fit it in volume wise. The idea is you don't really want the user to notice that it comes in. Or the listener. Need some sort of work reverb too. Professional. I do think a tambourine on free would actually sound really good. So we'll actually basically duplicate this. And then we'll replace a triangle with a tambourine. And then if we want to add some more percussion instruments, we can. Okay, this 1, 2, 3. good for the high-end percussion here. Figure out what the next thing that we need is. I feel like it's missing something, but bass trombones that come and do like a swell. Let's go find bass trombone swell here. Arclight doesn't have any swells. Okay, what about euphonium? Swells. You want a long swell or a short swell? Let's see how they sound. Maybe a short one. Is this mod controlled? That's perfect, but let's see if we can. Yeah, and then I put some reverb on here. Oh, and then if we do a pitch bend, how would that sound? That could work. There we go. Next thing that we need is some sort of bass for this section. I think I'm just going to go for like a synth sphere. Bass. Like this, but really subtle. I literally just want these notes. might sound kind of interesting is if we do some weird rhythms with our French horns in the second half here. Metropolis Arc 3. Brass Orchestra. Yes. Forte Piano Cluster Y. What would that sound like? No, that's not it. We just do like staccato horns, but like soft. Ooh, which might sound more like trumpets, but. That actually works. We can even double this on violas. Let's see. I'm dragging the reverb over from the synth to the horns just for that consistency. I'm going to turn down the mix though a little bit. Okay, so it's there, but it's so. Okay, let's do the same thing for viola. You want to use contact here. Routing. Oh, what am I doing? Sign player. I want contact here. Solo strings. Staccato. These are all different lengths, so I have to kind of play. That's perfect. A little more viola, a little less. Perfect. Now, how does that sound in the mix? Perfect. I do think a wider, more reverby pad could add just a little bit here to the beginning. Especially if they kind of pan left to right. So it does feel just like a little narrow. Oh yes. Oh yes, this was some reverb on it. In a very low volume. That would be perfect. actually added a lot more than I thought it would. Right here. I'm thinking a flutter tongue flute or trumpet. That just fades in and out. Actually, let's do all this. That was perfect, actually. So we should add the reverb here. Wonderful. Just make sure it starts at the top. Get a little more reverb here. I think it does need something right here. What might actually sound good is like a very quiet solo vocalist. It just goes, ah. Sure we do a volume fade. I want it to barely be noticeable. A little more noticeable than that. Add it once more too, so it's not. let this ring out just a little more. Just like kind of letting it. I think we could use a little bit of focus here. Right even here, let's see. That's perfect. These hooks are a little raised. Let me fix that quick. Okay, we need to add 3 more instruments. What else do we need? Ooh, we could do a response with a horn or some brass thing. Let's see. Mid strings, maybe. Yeah, if we keep this real quiet and put a little extra reverb on it. Where'd it go? I just lost it. Did I delete it? I must have. Okay, let me try again. Mid strings. Okay, it's very subtle, but hit the C sharp. It's a little fainter. What else do we need? I mean, we could double this with a horn too, just to give it a little more body. Extra. Ooh, or we could do an alto flute because we wanted to add more air anyway. So there we go. Okay. So my last thing, I was thinking we can add a harpsichord that doubles the melody, but we can keep it kind of subtle. Let's see, does Opus even have a harpsichord? It does. Yeah. Very subtle. Just adds a little more. I can copy over this rainbow part. Okay, I'm going to add one bonus instrument, and that's just a regular harp. So this is a harpsichord. Just a normal harp. Okay, so I'm going to play this one more time and then give you kind of a quick recap. Make sure the video is visible here. All right, there you have it. I think it works pretty well. It does capture that basically two different moods, a little bit more hopeful and optimistic here with this shot, and then dark, mysterious, gritty with this shot. Um, so I guess to recap, we let the first 10 instruments do all the heavy lifting, and then we just detailed with the rest. And then what we did is we built the two sections separately, using basically different versions of the same idea, and then we built the transition in between. And I think that worked out pretty well. I'm going to play it one more time, and then we'll call it the end. there you have it. Thank you so much for watching.